Hello and welcome back to Robyn Scherer Photography, and today I'm going to share with you how to use the color grading. I believe it used to be called the split tone area of the develop panel. So with that, let's get started. So I'm going to start with this image. We're at the beach obviously, and it's sunset. So this is Sook straight out of camera. I'm going to apply my basic preset, and that gives it a little bit of a pop. As always, I always grab the eyedropper, click on something white or gray to adjust the white balance. Once I do that, I always check skin tone to make sure my skin is creamy. So I will, sorry, out of habit, I went to crop it. So I'm going to use the rule of thirds, and I'm going to have her as the main subject so that the viewer's eye goes right to that grid. Hit return so it sets. I'm going to zoom in on her, grab the eyedropper, check her skin tone. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you will know I like checking my skin tones. So every ethnicity has skin tone numbers. She's Caucasian, so her numbers at the bottom of that target you can see are the RGB numbers. 75, 65, 55 are what I'm shooting for, or 85, 78, 68. So we're kind of close, kind of not. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust some things to get her skin tone where I like it, and then we'll mess with the color grading. So I'm going to warm this up a hair. I'm going to drop the exposure just a little bit. Check her skin tone again. So we're at 80, 74, 68, so we're closer. 74, 65, 58. So that's pretty much right on the money. You can be off a point or two. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to leave that. Again, skin tone tip. If you're almost to your numbers and you don't want to mess with the global settings, you can come down to the HSL sliders and use luminance. If you bump it a hair, it will lighten up her skin tone. I know her personally, so I know she's more fair. If you take the orange down, it will darken. You can see that extreme there. So I'm going to take it up to probably 3 or 4, and I will check her skin tone one more time. So now we're at 75, 67, 60. Closer, so that's even closer than we were, so I'm going to leave that. Okay, so the overall picture here, if we go to color grading, hitting this button here, that's going to give you all 3 circles that you're working with. You can also click here and scroll through them individually. So I will start with the midtones. With the midtones, I normally stay in this warmer area. So if you move the circle around, watch these numbers down here. I'm going to keep it in the warmer area, and you can see how it's affecting the entire image ever so slightly. So I'm going to keep it in the warmer area, and then I'm going to increase the saturation. Now you can go extreme, but you're just making minor effects. You just want your photo to pop a little bit more. So I'm gonna come up a little bit there. Luminance will make it brighter. So now I feel like she's a hair too dark. So I'm gonna come up to exposure, pop that up a little more. So the backslash button, remember, takes you back to the beginning. So you can continue checking, making sure you're not doing crazy changes on your images. So with some warmth in the highlights, the midtones, I'm going to go to the highlights, and I'm still going to stick to the warmer areas. Again, watch these numbers change. I'm going to bump up the saturation a hair, bump up the luminance a hair. Now you'll notice these numbers are all for each section: highlights, midtones. Your blending and balance will stay the same for all of them. So if we go down to the shadows, now for the midtones and the highlights, we stayed warm. You're going to balance it by going to the shadows, staying in these cooler areas, again, watch these numbers change. I'm going to circle around to the cooler areas just to balance out. You can see her skin changing ever so slightly. So I think that looks about right. I'm going to up the saturation a hair, the luminance a hair. Again, you're just wanting to make your image pop a little bit more. And when you play in this color grading area, you can really get a signature look for your own images. Blending, I'm going to leave. So when you blend it higher, it makes everything more extreme. And if you blend it lower, it kind of makes it a lot less. So I'm going to leave it right at 50. Balance. Balance puts more whites in your shadows and then more whites in your highlights if you go up. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. I'm not going to mess with that. So let's go before, after. Now, I'm going to check her skin balance, her skin tone, make sure it's still balanced how we like it. 78, 68, 69, 60. It's close enough. If I come up here and check it, it's a little bit off. So I'm going to take the warmth down a shade, and I'm going to take the pink down just a hair. Now, when I clicked in this area, I use my arrows on the keyboard. It's an easier way to adjust than sliding. Now I'm going to go back and double check here. So we're at, right, this is a mid-tone area, and that's where you're checking. 78, 69, 60, so we're pretty close. 85, 78, 68, we're pretty close. I think she's still a little bit pink. I'm going to take that down a hair. And then I'm also going to drop the exposure a hair and check again. So 76, 67, 58. That is a lot more spot on to 75, 65, 55. Again, you want to keep a creamy skin tone. So that is how you can use the color grading. Now, I don't use that a whole lot, as I tend to use my basic presets, and I will move the sliders accordingly and how I feel like the image should look. And you'll also go off how it felt at the session, what the weather was actually like when you were there. So again, you don't want to make crazy changes on your images. You want to enhance them, you want them to pop, and that's kind of what you're looking for. So with that being said, the other thing you can use to make your image pop is the tone curve. And if you hold your command button on a Mac and click a point, you can pull it up. And an S curve will give your photo enough contrast to make it pop. And then you're going to pop down here to make kind of, so here's your shadows. This is your highlights. You can see it light up on your screen. So you're going to bring your highlights up, your shadows down, and it just gives your image a little bit of contrast. So instead of looking flat, makes it pop. Now that we did that, you can see her skin changed a little bit, in my opinion. I will check it again because I'm a little bit crazy about making sure they look good. So now she's more at 85, 78, 68. Again, perfect numbers. So I feel like her skin tone still looks creamy. You're still at good numbers. It looks very warm and natural, very beautiful. Any last touches you want to do, I'll come in and use the healing tool for blemishes. I'll just take that off, and I'll grab a brush from the masking area. Now I've already made my brushes. I have another video if you want to watch it, tutorial if you will, and it shows you how to create a brush, especially for skin. You don't want to go over eyes when you're brushing the skin. I have one specifically for eyes, and I believe I call it Sharp Eyes. And you can see how I've set the settings, and I saved it as Sharp Eyes. And then I just pop it on. Now, it's a little too bright on that side, so what I'll do is I'll go back in, choose it, come back over here, use my arrows, and go down just a bit. So she's still getting a pop, but she doesn't have crazy eyes. So you want to keep that in mind again. So here's before, here's after. She's popping perfectly. The other thing you could do is you could come all the way down to vignetting right here and go either way to see the extremes. Extreme, extreme. So double click it, sets it back to 0. Let's say I want to really draw attention to her. I'll just make the edges come in just a little bit, like ever so slightly. And now you can see the attention's really on her, before, after. Okay, so we talked about your color grading, using the shadows, the midtones, the highlights, and how you can make very subtle adjustments in your image and really make it all yours. And the tone curve to add some contrast. That's another option. We talked about grabbing the dropper, making sure your skin tones look good, your numbers are right. And that's about it for the color grading today. And if you have questions, reach out. In the description, I will put a link to my site. I am also offering an online senior portrait class. I go over a unique posing workflow that is guaranteed to give you not only a consistent gallery each time that you are working with a senior, whether it be a high school senior or a college senior. It gives you a consistent workflow. I talk about what I talk about with them to elicit genuine reactions. You want emotive images, I go through how to do that. I think you'll get a lot out of the course. I hope you click the link and join in, and I hope to see you back here on my channel. With that, have a great day, and I hope you learned something. Take care.